There's plenty of RNG already that can decide games. Well, that argument's retarded, in my opinion. And the reason why I think that argument's unacceptable, and I'm really sad that that's most people's main argument, is they're like, there's already plenty of RNG that decides games. Who cares if there's more? Me. Why does there need to be more? There's a limit of where RNG is fun, right? So you have the spectrum of RNG, and you're like, yeah, well, you need a little RNG so the game's not stale. I agree with Blizzard on that point. I think that's fantastic. Have a little RNG so the game doesn't get stale. And then there's a point where you have too much RNG, just saying RNG is fun, let's keep adding more RNG. Well, RNG is not always fun. There's a limit for it. There can be too much where it starts becoming too much of an affecting the scale of play. So my meter for RNG is when it becomes statistically unlikely for the best player in the world based on win rates to qualify to prelims given if they've played all 3 available tries to them. That's when I think the RNG is too much, and that's where we're at right now. If you look at the win rates of the best players in the game right now, and now let's say they qualify to every single prelims, it is unlikely for them to win any of them and qualify for BlizzCon. It's not in their favor. So, and that's not me. My win rate's 58%. There's players that have 66 and higher. So there's players that have better win rate than me that I'm talking about. My win rate is too low because I'm just not good enough anymore. So I don't think more RNG is always good. And I don't think there's a lot of RNG, let's not care about Yogg, is a good argument. I love how I'm saying all of this while playing Yogg. Yogg's pissed. Yogg's like, you want me banned from competitive play? I even had it set up so I had Effigy out when I played Yogg, so then he kills it, I get another 10 drop. Doesn't matter when your whole hand gets thrown away. Yeah, it needs more layers. That's what I'm saying, man. It's my exact argument as well, and then they retort to me with, but there's already so much RNG. Okay. How do you respond to that? Sebi, all of those players have too small sample size to be statistically significant. Everyone with above like 62, I think it was. And this is with stats not taken by me, so now I have to rely on third-party stats, and I don't feel confident like quoting third-party stats that well. There's plenty of articles out there about all of this stuff, about your odds of winning an open tournament, and then prelims are basically open tournaments. And when your odds of winning an open tournament are too low for you to be the best player in the world and try every prelims time and still not win, it hurts the drive to be a competitor a little bit. It's like even if you are the best and play everything perfectly, and then you factor in the fact that you're human and you're not going to do that. Do you think tournaments would lose viewership if tourneys would matter drastically different? All right, it's hard to read, but I get what you're trying to say. No, I don't think tournaments would lose a lot of viewership if the meta is drastically different than ladder. And they're losing viewership already, so fuck it, try something new, you know? If they're not going to suddenly keep doing the same thing and gain viewership, that's not going to work. They need to change something since they are losing viewership. That's just what's happening. When your you're doing the same thing every time and your viewership's going like this. This is the curve of viewership right now. And their current plan is, fuck it, let's keep doing the same thing. And suddenly maybe it'll go up. And I don't think that's a really great plan. I think it may be a little bit better to at least try something. Why'd I get into poker? Because I'm bad at it? I've never played. Because people watch me complain about this. If I'm honest. Why is the viewership in tournaments down? I don't know, ask the people. I'm only one man. But if you just look at the numbers, you can see that the viewership's down. Insomnia's down. Well, Insomnia was down mainly their own fault. They didn't advertise very well. Yeah, if you don't advertise very well, it's going to be very hard for people to watch your tournament. But if you just, in general, look at esports events over the last, like, not esports, but Hearthstone events over the last X amount of months, you'll see a declining trend. Maybe banning it. That's what I'm saying, Actor Hunter. I'm saying it's the viewership's already on decline. Maybe banning certain cards could help. If it's already on decline, what's the risk? And I think it would be good. I think the argument that Yogg is fun isn't great. Or the argument, their main number one argument right now, all of the Yogg advocates are, the game's already so much RNG, screw it, Yogg's just fun. and there's more RNG in draws anyway. Well, I'm saying that the RNG that Yogg adds helps push the RNG threshold over the limit of being too much RNG. And I think there is such a thing. If viewership is down, then why take one of the most exciting cards out? Because everyone complains about it. The competitive scene complains about it a lot. Casters complain about it. I don't think it is the greatest card in Hearthstone. I think it makes tournaments feel less rewarding to win and dumber to lose. Almost everyone that's lost a tournament, like a lot of the people that have lost tournaments, have just been like on their Twitter immediately after, lost to Yogg, lol. And then people that watch tournaments are like, well, all the players say that they just lost for pure luck. And the guy that won says he won because he got lucky. And Ecop won the last tournament, Insomnia, and he said, I didn't practice for 2 weeks before the tournament. Lol. Like, if the players don't care about the tournaments and they aren't investing time preparing, they're not talking about how skillful the game is, what as a viewer are you watching? Like, you just watch it for the memes? Like, you know? At least for me. I can't speak on behalf of everyone else because I'm not everyone else, but for me, when I watch competitive things, and, you know, Hearthstone esports is supposed to be competitive, I watch it to try and get better, try and learn from the pros, and that's what makes it interesting to me, and that's how I have fun doing it. But if you can't do that because of what the meta's creating, then I feel like that could be a reason why viewership could decline. Even if, like, you're a Hearthstone casual, it's still more fun when there's a storyline behind the game and they're like, this guy's like wins consistently, so great, and you see the same players coming consistently and whatnot. Could help the game, man. That's all I'm saying. There's an article on Tempo Storm that talks about some RNG figures as far as standardized tournaments go, such as prelims. So if you look at open tournaments, 7 rounds, 128 participants, such as, you know, prelims, the most important tournament for qualifying for BlizzCon. Now we look at that tournament, 7 rounds. If your win rate per game, per best of 5, is 60%, then you have 6.9% chance of winning the entire tournament and qualifying your way to BlizzCon. That's 60%. 60% is better than most pros currently have in tournament setting. So if you are somehow able to bump it up to 65% chance to win per game in a best of 5, your chance to qualify for BlizzCon goes up from 6.9% to 15.31% chance per prelims. That's a 5% difference per game. Now, Yogg obviously isn't one of the only culprits causing RNG issues, but I'm just saying that's how it gets extrapolated and expanded so much because you play so many games across the span of a tournament that if the percent chance that RNG dicks you is down by 5%, you're 3 times more likely to qualify for things and win things. The players that are consistent are then 3 times more consistent. It's not even a lot of RNG that you need to get rid of. Just a little RNG. Just a little bit. Just put it on the other side of that tipping point. Boom. Consistent pros in Hearthstone. People, the same name. Suddenly you watch a tournament and you recognize more than one guy. More people tune in. Familiar faces. It's beautiful. I have a dream. I think the way Hearthstone competitive should work is instead of grinding out the same format over and over and over and over and over again until people have perfected it and, you know, they've completely figured out everything about the format, because those are the instances where things become all RNG oriented, is when that happens. And so the good players usually have a really, really high win rate at the beginning of the format when no one really knows what are the best decks in the format and yada yada. So I think just having different formats pretty much every tournament, mixing things up, keeping it fresh, not maybe every tournament, but like every month, you know, we throw out some new format where there's different rules. You can change X amount of cards in your decks, you queue in this specific order, you bring one of every class. Like, just constantly mixing it up with things like that is going to allow people to adapt and change to the circumstances that they're dealt with, which I think is the most fun part of the game, is, you know, being faced with a challenge and then adapting your deck to it. That's why I like things like Challenge Stone and all those sort of wonky formats. So I think that would be really cool if, you know, competitive became more oriented on cool, different formats all the time, because it gives you a lot to think about, right? You have like a lot of opportunities for different decks when you have to adapt your decks to a different format. They start allowing new rules that they've never allowed before, then you can't play the same decks, right? Like if you're allowed to switch cards in all your decks every single time and things like that, then I'm not talking about like deck building challenges. I'm talking about like, you know, instead of Conquest or instead of Last Hero Standing, they do something like some of like Via Game used to do, and there used to be other tournaments that had, you know, unique rule sets where you were able to like ban 2, pick 1, things like that. I also think if you do Last Hero Standing, you should probably play, yeah, if you're gonna do 1 ban, I think they should open up the amount of classes you can bring. Because right now it's really hard in Last Hero Standing to bring 2 decks to counter anything. Or, well, you bring 2 decks to counter, 2 of your decks counter Popular Aggro Deck 1, and then 2 of your decks counter Popular Aggro Deck 2, or Popular Control Deck 2. And then your opponent is able to ban 1 of the 2 decks that counters their potentially sweeper deck, and then they have a 60-40 matchup, and if they win that, then they just sweep your whole lineup with that. So they win 1 unfavored matchup and they're good to go because they can ban out the other counter. So if there's another deck involved in that process that you can bring, then you can maybe have 2 potential counters, which will increase your consistency when trying to counter a deck, instead of only 1 try at countering it because you have to cover so many other bases that you can't counter everything. So you can only counter it with 2 decks, and then they ban out one of the decks that counter it and sweep you with some bullshit deck like Zoo. And yeah, Freeze Mage and LHS, just another deck that's similar. I just think there's a lot more potential for trying stuff out. Why have we played Last Hero Standing / Conquest for like 2.5 years without any thought of, you know, other things to try? That's all I'm saying about competitive Hearthstone. Experimentation. It's not a great esports scene in the States at the moment. It's building. It's not quite there yet. For Hearthstone, anyway. So